Alright gang, we're going to talk about something new to Python. Now this is not something that, if you were in my previous COP1000 courses, we wouldn't have talked about this because this didn't exist until recently. In Python version 3.8, they have added what's called a Walrus operator. What that means is, in previous versions, 3.7 and before, it didn't exist. So if you tried to use it in code that ran with Python version 3.7, it's not going to be acknowledged. So you have to be running the latest version, and your environment has to be ready for the latest version. So with that said, why did they call it a walrus? Well, the doggone thing looks like a walrus. It's two eyes, which is the colon symbol, and two big tusks, which is the equal sign, or the assignment operator. Now, this concept, yeah, it's new. Why did they add it? Well, it's to try to do two things at once. That's really what it is. We're going to do two things in one line of code. And sometimes it's a way of doing things real efficient and streamlined. And this one, it's not so streamlined. But yeah, we're doing two things at once. So the two things that we're going to do, let's look at this little block of code. And in this block of code, we have a variable called tweet limit 280. It's a number, integer. The next statement we see, tweet string blah times 50. So that's blah times 50. It's not pretty, but if we print it out, you'll see what it is. Diff is a variable. It's being assigned the value tweet limit minus the length or the len of tweet string. What's the difference between the limit and how long this string is? If this string is shorter than the limit, if the length is less than 280, we're going to do something. So diff is how much smaller is one than the other. If it's smaller than, or it's greater than or equivalent to 0, that tweet is okay. If it's smaller than 0, you were too long, and we go through and tell them, hey, you went over by, and the ABS, absolute value, meaning ignore positive or negative. So if it's negative 23, you went over by 23 characters. So that's the logic of what's taking place in this block of code. Now what the Walrus does is it allows us to compare something and assign a value to it all in one fell swoop. Essentially, combine that line of code and that line of code all into one statement. I'm at a loss. I don't have any problem with having those in two separate statements. But for some reason, somebody decided, hey, why can't we do this using this? Okay. Well, don't shoot the messenger. This is something new. It's in the language. And if you move on and you take other courses that involve Python that may use this Walrus operator, you need to know what it is. Okay. So I'm staying current with this. So let's come down and we'll look at how this will look using the Walrus operator. Let me see if I can make this smaller so we can see both together. Tweet limit, same. Tweet string, same. Assignment, wait, okay. If, diff, walrus. And in the walrus, the first thing we're doing is the assignment. And as soon as the assignment part of it's done, then there's that comparison. Because that's the comparison we had there. Our condition. So if what we just put in that variable diff is greater than or equivalent to 0, that's the condition. Colon, do this. Else do this. So all we essentially did was we assigned the value to the variable, declared it and assigned it in this part of that line of code, or this part of the statement, and we also had that conditional. In the statement, come down to the next line. If that condition is not true, we come down here. The assignment takes place regardless of this being true or false. That's it in a nutshell. That's the Walrus. Okay? We'll use the Walrus later on when we're dealing with loops, whether it's a for loop or a while loop. Okay? And we'll deal with that, as it says, in chapter 6, after we talk about strings in chapter or module 5. All right? So, if you're comfortable with things using if and else and elif, go play with the Walrus. Okay? We're not digging deep into Walrus in this module, but we will apply it in future modules. So just get familiar with what it means and the fact that the first part of it is the assignment and the second part of it is the comparison. Okay? So I will see you in module 5. Take your time on your notebook and be thorough. Discuss it with others in the class and get familiar with what we're doing with these conditionals. Be familiar with numbers and the different numeric data types up to now. Okay. Things are getting a little more complex as we move ahead. And as you see, we're looking forward at the different types of data structures and data types that we haven't dealt with till now. The lists, the tuples, the dictionaries, strings. There's going to be more things we're going to do. Okay. So I will see you there. Ask questions when you have them. And you're in a group. You're all in this group together. And strength in numbers is a big deal. Get to know the people that are in the group with you. So I'll see you moving forward.